Alright, for the Onyxia fight, I just want to go over the mechanics and how to execute it properly from phase 1 to 3 while we go through this video of the run that we just did, which I think we executed the mechanics pretty darn well. Right now in the run that we did, we had 18 total players, um, 2 tanks, 5 healers, 6 melee DPS, and 6 range DPS. In phase 1 of Onyxia, you're going to be doing very slow damage. You're going to let the tank build up as much threat as possible. You're going to watch how I position it here. You have to be cognizant of the fact that periodically Onyxia will do a wing buffet with a knockback. When she does that, the tank will lose 25% of his max threat every time, and she does that about every 10 or 15 seconds or so. So phase 1 and the whole fight is not a race, it's a marathon. Melee and casters are going to be doing white damage, wanding. Healers should only have to heal the tank. There shouldn't be anybody else that needs to be healed. Raid damage can come from people spawning whelps. Raid damage can come from people standing too close to her head and getting breathed on or getting cleaved, as well as getting tail swiped, which will put you into the whelp cave, spawn whelps, and increase raid damage. But if everybody's positioned correctly and everybody's executing the mechanics correctly, the only person taking any damage should be the tank, so the healer should be able to maintain really good throughout the really good mana throughout the whole of phase 1. So if we're looking at this here, I'm about to pull. I go in, the group runs up along the left hand side, sticking tight to the left to make sure that they don't get tail swiped as they're running up, and then you're going to notice they also stick back as I pull her to the other side of the room. They're making sure that they stay behind her front 2 legs. That way they don't get breathed on. As you see, she's about to stop and she's going to do a breath. And when she does, anybody that's forward of her 2 front legs, basically in a 180-degree cone, is going to take about 90 to all of their health as fire damage. As phase 1, you can see everybody is wanding. There's a couple people that are actually casting abilities, but they're being very cognizant of their threat. You see Cug just did a feign death to drop his threat. This is very much not a race at all. We're just slowly getting her down. I'm doing as much threat as possible. You can see my threat meter on the right hand side. Every time she knocks me back, everybody else gains a whole good bit of threat. Pat Bateman here in a second is going to be vanishing to drop his threat. As we're watching that, we'll let that go. Turn the sound on. Pat Bateman vanishes off the threat meter. Pike's going to be vanishing here in a second too.
Tried to kick this and confirmed that you can't kick it?
We did try a few times to kick her knockback, and it did work on the private servers. It doesn't seem to work on here. You can't prevent that knockback, so you just, as the tank, you need to be doing as much threat as possible, and the DPS need to be especially aware of how much threat they're doing. You'll see right here as we're about to go into phase 2, we're still a good few percents away. But you'll see she knocks me back and Minibus pulls threat for just a second, which seems to always happen right as we go into phase 2. But it didn't cause too much hurt. It's about 68% right now. 67.
Like 66. Wing buff it right now. Okay.
Okay, it wasn't this one that he pulled threat.
Remember, groups 2 and 4 get over to the right side. Groups 2.
Yeah, so we split up groups 1 and 3 onto the left side of the room, and groups 2 and 4 onto the right side of the room. It's really especially important that during phase 2, everybody stays spread out. You can see I've got the range check that pops up automatically if you have DBM. It's especially important that everybody's making sure that whenever they get fireballed, nobody else is getting hit by a fireball. If only one person ever gets hit by fireballs, then it almost eliminates the raid damage in total, because if you get hit by a firewall and you're popping fire protection potion on cooldown and you're bandaging, the only damage that's going to be taken really that needs to be healed through is the whelps. But other than that, all else should be mitigated, and the healer should be able to maintain mana throughout the entirety of this phase. If you look how we're spread out and how I'm literally just focusing at this point on making sure that I've got nobody inside my 8-yard range meter, and that we're staying spread out. You can see on the top right, they're doing the same. They're staying as spread out as possible. Oftentimes in phase 2, people tend to get clumped up here in the northwest corner, and also on the opposite side if you've got people split up. A large amount of the raid damage in phase 2 comes from multiple people getting fireballed at once. If everybody is staying spread out well enough, you don't have to worry about this. Now, one of the things is her deep breaths have a very wide range. You need to be pretty far off to the sides in order to not get hit by them. But if you see, like right now, it looks like she's close to the northwest corner. I'm in range to be killed. But when that fire breath goes out, from where I am right now, I have enough time to get over to the corner. This mage over here probably plans to ice block through it. But if it wasn't a mage, if it was just another player, they would be for sure dead if a fire breath got called right now, which they can get called at any point. So we're just moving, we're staying spread out. Now we've got people spreading the northeast and southwest corners. Now she's moving towards the middle, and so she's moving towards the southwest. So we're moving down to the southeast corner. That group that was on the east side is now moving across. We're kind of moving in a clockwise direction. If you notice, all of us right now, we're just all spread out, ping-ponged. Everybody's focusing on staying spread out, taking the whelps as they come, making sure only one person ever gets hit by the fireballs. Sometimes we group up a little bit, but you can see we're all watching for that fireball on me, on whoever, to make sure that nobody gets hit. She just moved up towards to the west position, which means the north and the south are safe. And so we're adjusting for that. Now it looks like it goes in a pretty predictable pattern. It looks like she goes either around counterclockwise or clockwise, and then sometimes she goes back. So she'll start going counterclockwise, how she did. She just went back west, and now she's going to the southwest. And I think after this, she moves to the south and then the southeast. So it looks like she won't randomly cross the room. We got phase 3 soon. That means she's at 45%. She's moving to the south, it looks like, and we're back now. We're in the opposite position that we were at the beginning of phase 2, and we're just staying spread out, doing DPS when we can. If you see like Gug right here, or Cug right here, is not, he takes second. He's not just attacking Onyxia. This is not at all a race. We don't need to be trying to focusing on killing Onyxia. We need to focus on our positioning, and we can take as long as we need to kill Onyxia, because essentially there's no raid damage. If we stop it right now, we don't need to stop it. But you can look. If you look at Pinkleton, at Tinywit, at Thrillin, at Cans, everybody's almost at 100% mana, and everybody's almost at 100% health. She just did a deep breath. Let's see if I can't go back. So she's about to do a deep breath. They're not quite in the position to be saved, right? But they're moving, they're getting where they need to go. She's about to do a deep breath. Boom, breath pops up on your screen. You can see it as long as you have DBM. Everybody gets off to the sides. She does her deep breath, goes straight across the room to the opposite side. We take care of these whelps, and I would bet that we're about to get a nice good spread out again. Right there, that was like 4 people got fireballed. That's bad. That's really bad. But for the most part, we're staying really spread. So we're okay. She's going to be going into phase 3 here pretty shortly. As she goes, this is we're doing this with 20 people right now, right? Because we're doing it with 20 people, everybody needs to be executing the mechanics perfectly. Because if you lose somebody, it's just a huge blow to your whole team. When you're doing it with 40 people, you can kind of just not really care about the mechanics, because if 6 or 7 people die, if 10 people die, who cares, right? Because you got 40. But with 20 people, you need every single body. But it's 100% doable, regardless of if you're in pre-bis gear or you're in full raid gear. You can do it with 20 people. It's all dependent on how well you execute the mechanics. We're going into phase 3. So you're gonna see here in phase 3, I pick up threat really quickly. In a 40-man group, you're not gonna see this as much because you're gonna push through phase 2 so fast. But because we're in phase 2 for so long, um, she has a chance to fireball almost everybody in the raid. When she does that fireball, it does a threat drop on whoever it fireballs, and she targets people in order of how much threat they have. So by the time we get to 39%, it's kind of people are getting a little bit of threat and then getting fireballed, and somebody gets a little bit of threat and then they get fireballed, um, making it so that when we go into phase 3, nobody actually has that much threat to begin with, and I can just pick it up pretty quick. So it goes after Rhyme Souls, um, and this is a big thing going into phase 3. So as you're about to go into phase 3, everybody should be aware that she's about to come down, and they should start making movement back to that phase 1 position in the northwest corner. Um, when you're going into phase 3, everybody in the raid, especially when you're doing it with 20 people, needs to be watching Onyxia and seeing who she's targeting. And if she's targeting you, you need to go to the tank position and you need to go there and just die. Because if she's targeting you, you're going to die. That's just the case. You need to, that means you need to be the tank. You need to position Onyxia properly. Because if you don't, which Rhymesol is doing a great job, but if you don't, Onyxia can end up over here and it can screw with your whole positioning of the raid, and it's really bad. Now, as soon as Rhymesouls died, I was able to pick it up. Going into phase 3, I popped Death Wish, uh, and I popped Blood Rage, and I was just trying to get as much threat as possible, and I was able to pick it up. And that execution was done pretty well. If you look over at the people on the right side, they're all the casters are as far up against the wall as possible. If you're up there when she fears you, you won't run in a direction that could get you tail swiped or put into the whelps or breathed on. And the melee are making sure to stay more closer to her front legs than her back legs. And the reason that they're doing that is because when they get feared, if you're closer to her front legs than her back, you won't have enough time to run enough distance to get tail swiped. Right there is pretty sketch, but I was able to get her back in time before anybody got too fucked up. So at this point, I've gotten about enough threat, and we're just getting that slow and steady burn to the end. Once again, we're not like blowing shit up or trying to do crazy shit. We're making sure that I've got enough threat. It's still, the difference between this and phase 1 is that in phase 3 she will randomly pull in more whelps, and in phase 3 she randomly does her fear. Now, one thing that I've noticed is that after the first like 1 or 2 minutes of phase 3, she fears and uses her abilities a lot less often. So if you're looking right here, she's going to use a bellowing roar. I run through her. I'm slowed. Ooh, big sketch. I got knocked back. Big sketch. But then I get her back into position. And we're good. She breathes. Now let's see. How long is it going to take before she does another knockback? Looks like Killer Bee just died. Oh no, he just feigned. Bellowing roar. So it's a little bit unpredictable. we'll say. But it seems like at first she does them very often, and then after a little bit she slows down. She's going down to 10% right now, and we're gonna finish her off. And it's this attempt that we did was so smooth, and what made it smooth was that when we went into phase 3, everybody got to their positions quickly. Threat was on Rhyme Souls. You see right here, Minibus pulls Threat right before the end and dies to sacrifice himself to Onyxia for the Deathbringer, which didn't end up dropping. Um, but everybody got back into those phase 1 positions really fast, and then everybody, or the person that got Threat, which was Rhyme Souls, he did exactly what he's supposed to do, and he ran straight to where the tank position is and died. And it was exactly because of that that we were able to have such a clean transition into phase 3. The two biggest things about the Onyxia fight when you're doing it with 20 people or less is to make sure that you are effectively mitigating for the damage taken in phase 2 by spreading out, by focusing the whelps when they come out, and by bandaging yourself instead of having the healers heal you so that they can regain mana. Um, Other than that, it's just a really slow burn, and it's, when a couple people make mistakes in the raid and they die, it's just like it makes it ever more difficult for you to finish. So hopefully that helps with anybody that's a little bit confused, um, or is a little bit unsure about what some of the mechanics are and how they work. If you have any other questions about how the Onyxia mechanics works, be sure to send me a message. But other than that, going forward, as long as everybody's paying attention and on their A game, um, we should have this pretty easily.